last year was just a roller coaster of a season for Georgia. The Bulldogs started the season ranked number 1 in the country. A couple of weeks later, they survived a 1-point victory over Kentucky. Then they lost the thriller to Alabama in Tuscaloosa, where they rallied from a 28-point deficit only to lose 41-34. They rallied with a few extra wins after that, got destroyed by Ole Miss in Oxford 28-10, survived an 8 overtime victory over Georgia Tech 44-42, beat Texas in overtime in the SEC championship game, and then ultimately fell to Notre Dame in the college football playoff. Again, a wild roller coaster of a season for this program. They went 11-3 overall. They lost their first regular season game since 2020. It was their first season with at least 2 regular season losses since 2020. So I guess the worst season for Georgia since the 2020 COVID season. But now entering 2025, this team is once again loaded. They are looking poised for another college football playoff run and looking to capture yet another national title. You look at the offense, we'll start with the roster. They do lose a lot of star power, namely their quarterback Carson Beck. Some Georgia fans were happy that he was gone, some were sad to see him go, but Beck is now at Miami and they are now turning to Gunnar Stockton, who has a lot of promise. We saw him rally Georgia in the SEC championship game against Texas. He started the playoff game against Notre Dame, went 20 for 32 for 234 yards and a touchdown against the Fighting Irish, but only led Georgia to 10 points in that game. But Stockton, again, a lot of promise. Got a solid arm, a full offseason with him as the starter. Got some dangerous dual threat capability in there as well, which is going to add different dynamic to this offense. You've got Nate Frazier coming back at running back, was a leading rusher with over 670 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. A loaded offensive line per usual. And while they do lose their top 2 pass catchers from last year, they do return their 3rd best pass catcher in Dylan Bell, their star tight end Oscar Delt. They add in Zachariah Branch in from USC, who had over 800 reception yards over the last 2 years with the Trojans, and they add in Texas A&M's leading wide receiver from last year in Noah Thomas. So a lot of talent once again on offense for Georgia. This team took a pretty big step back offensively last year. They averaged 40.1 points per game in 2023, dropped to 31.5 in 2024. I think this year they can get back to around that 34, 35 points per game mark. I really do. So they're going to improve offensively, statistically. Defensively, I mean, come on, it's Kirby Smart, man. They're going to be strong per usual. 6 starters are back after allowing over 20 points per game for the first time since 2020. So a very historic year, I guess, if you want to call it that, for Georgia. But again, 20 points per game is not that bad. They do lose 3 of their top 4 tacklers from last season, but once again, just like the offense, still very loaded. Kristen Miller returns on the defensive line, going to be the leader up front. The linebacking core is really good. Lots of talent there. Their second leading tackler from last year, C.J. Allen, is back, along with Raylan Wilson. They add Elo Madozi in from Army, had 6.5 sacks last year with the Black Knights, and that secondary, despite losing so much talent from last year, is loaded once again. They've got their interception leader from last year, Dalen Everett, returning. KJ Bolden is back, was phenomenal, I thought, as a freshman last year. Daniel Harris is back, and they do bring in Jaden Harris, who was 3rd on the team in tackles for Miami last year. So Georgia has done a great job of, once again, retaining talent, a lot of young talent that got some experience last year. It's only going to get better because they developed players so well. Also went out there and added plenty of great transfers to the transfer portal. They're going to make an immediate impact. And once again, this is the team that for many is probably the favorite to win the SEC and to get back to the playoff and is a true national title contender. Take a look at the schedule. It actually, to me, is favorable for Georgia. Look, they've got tough games in there, sure. Tough games in there, but look at where the games are. Alabama is in Athens. Texas is in Athens. And then some of the other tough games are at neutral sites. Georgia Tech will be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Florida, of course, being in Jacksonville. They really don't have too many tough road games. The only true road games are what? Tennessee, Auburn, and Mississippi State. That's it. Those are the only true road games. You got 2 neutrals in there and a lot of home games. So really lines up well, I think, for the Bulldogs. I'll tell you right now, I think they start 3-0. Marshall, Austin Peay, easy wins. Tennessee, they've won 8 straight over the Volunteers. That includes a 31-17 win last year. The Bulldogs got off to a slow start, down 10-0, rallied to win by 14. I think this Georgia defense ultimately wears down that Tennessee offense. I know Neyland Stadium is not an easy place to play by any means, but Georgia really hasn't had issues there over the last couple meetings. And Tennessee, this early in the year, is still going to be figuring out the issues offensively. No Nico Iamaleava. No Dylan Sampson. You've got a new quarterback, a younger running back core, some questions at wide receiver. This Georgia defense travels well, is going to do just fine. And I think that Georgia offense will eventually wear down the Tennessee defense as well. If Tennessee can't sustain drives offensively, that strong Tennessee defense will get worn down by this very solid Georgia offense. So the Bulldogs win that game. They're 3-0. Come out of the bye week. They're at home against Alabama. Big game. Maybe the biggest game of the weekend. It's going to be between that one and Penn State and Oregon. Those are the two best games on September 27th. So have that date circled on your calendar. Look, if you're basing this off of history, you just pick Bama and move on, right? Georgia has not fared well against the Crimson Tide. They're 1-9 in the last 10 meetings against Alabama. That includes a loss last year, as we mentioned, in Tuscaloosa. Georgia was down 28-0. They were down 30-7 at halftime, rallied to take the lead. They still lose 41-34. So again, they're 1-9 in the last 10. They have not hosted Alabama in Athens since 2015. So a lot of these games between Georgia and Alabama have been either in Atlanta for SEC championship games, other neutral sites for national championship games, or in Tuscaloosa. So, 2015, Kirby Smart wasn't even at Georgia. That's how long it's been since they've actually hosted Alabama between the hedges. And keep in mind, Georgia is 50-4 at home. 50-4 at home under Kirby Smart. They've won, 31 straight home games, I believe? This is a game where I know someone got on to me recently and said I wasn't really going against the grain. But again, a lot of people say I'm picking Alabama until Georgia proves they can beat them. I'm going against the grain a little bit because I am going to pick Georgia. Despite the history and despite the struggles, I believe home field advantage plays that big of a role. I believe this Georgia defense is that good. And while Alabama does have some really good pass catchers, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, I'm curious to see how Ty Simpson fares. How is Ty Simpson going to fare in this environment? Yeah, they'll have played in Tallahassee back in week 1, but I'm going to venture to say Athens is going to be a little bit more difficult than that. A night game especially. I wonder how he's going to fare against this elite of a Georgia defense. Kirby Smart's going to have this team ready to go, and I do think that Georgia, in a very close game, maybe just as good as it was last year, or at least close to it, gets the win over Alabama, and home field advantage is going to be a major reason why. So the Bulldogs are 4-0. They'll be 5-0 with a win over Kentucky. They narrowly escaped the Wildcats by 1 last year, 13-12. I think it's going to be quite a bit different this year, quite a bit of a larger margin this year. So they're still undefeated, 5-0, heading into a road game at Auburn. And that is a trap game if I've ever seen one. A rivalry game between the Bulldogs and the Tigers, as we know. A night game at Jordan-Hare Stadium, facing an Auburn team that is coming off a bye week, and a team and a coaching staff that will have a lot of pressure on them to deliver this year. Auburn has not fared well under Hugh Freeze. They're 4 straight losing seasons. Not all of those are because of him, but another losing season last year. They've got to deliver this year, and if they want to deliver and they want to consider this season a success, they're going to have to beat one of Georgia and Alabama, I think. Get a winning season, beat one of your big-time rivals, and I think it's going to be against Georgia. I think Auburn will beat Georgia here. And I know a lot of Georgia fans will disagree with that. They'll be frustrated with that. They'll look at this and they'll say Georgia won 31-13 last year. They're dominant. Auburn's not that good, but I beg to differ. I don't think Auburn's a world beater by any means, but Jackson Arnold's in at quarterback. I think he's going to do better with a offensive-minded coach and Hugh Freeze helping develop him. They've got a really good wide receiver core. That defense was good for Auburn last year. The defense was not the issue for the Tigers. They only gave up 21.3 points per game and are now loaded on that side of the ball. Last time Georgia and Auburn met at Jordan-Hare Stadium, Auburn nearly pulled off the upset. Georgia only escaped with a 27-20 victory. So you factor in the very difficult road environment, which I think is probably going to be the most difficult environment they faced to this point in the year. And actually probably going to be the most difficult environment they face all season because, again, you've got 2 neutral site games in there. I think Auburn at night in a game of this caliber is going to be a slightly more difficult than that road game at Neyland Stadium, and certainly way more difficult than whatever they're going to face in Starkville. So Auburn, with a better offense, with a solid defense, with the home crowd on their side, with the toughest environment that this young quarterback in Gunnar Stockton has faced in his career. Again, you don't include the SEC championship last year, don't include the playoff game because those were neutral sites. True road environment, don't think Georgia delivers. Auburn gets the win, and the Bulldogs take their first loss of the year. They're 5-1. After that, they bounced back with a win against Ole Miss, a revenge game, certainly. They lost to the Rebels 28-10 last year. The offensive line was horrendous. They gave up 5 sacks to Ole Miss last season. The offense couldn't get anything going. They couldn't protect their quarterback. It was just a really, really bad game. But now, Ole Miss loses tons. Jackson Dart's gone. A lot of their wide receivers are gone. The defense has some questions. Lane Kiffin has tried to rebuild them through the portal, but we'll see how quickly that pans out. But again, in Athens, where the last time these two teams met there, Georgia won by what? Like 30 points, 52-17. Yeah, 35 points. They're going to win in dominating fashion again. I truly believe that. So 6-1, coming out of the bye week, coming into the month of November. Well, they do have a handful of tough games in there. 2 neutral sites, a home game against Texas. I mean, it's still not an easy road whatsoever. They take on Florida, who they've beaten 4 years in a row, including 34-20 last year. I know a lot of people out there believe Florida can win this game. And I will tell you right now, I think if you disagree with the Auburn pick, that's fine. I think they'd probably lose to Florida. I think Georgia's losing one of those games. And I'm leaning more towards Auburn because it is a true road game. I know Florida was beating Georgia at halftime last year. And then DJ Lagway got hurt. Florida was down to their third-string quarterback, and they ultimately lost 34-20. So a lot of people are going to point to that and say, well, if DJ Lagway can stay healthy, considering how much better Florida is supposed to be this year, they're going to win. I can't necessarily argue too much with that, but I'm still not completely sold on the Gators. I think they've got a very difficult schedule. I think we need to see more of DJ Lagway. 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions for him last year. He's an electric playmaker, but can he stay healthy? Can he make better decisions? Can he exploit this good of a Georgia defense? A lot of questions there for me. I do think the Bulldogs find a way to win this game in Jacksonville, but it'll be close. It will be close. So they are still only a one-loss team. They will cruise past Mississippi State, who they beat by 10 last year. They will take on Texas in Athens, who they have their number. They beat Texas in Austin last year, 30-15. Then they beat them in the SEC championship game, 22-19 in overtime. Now they're getting them at home, where again they are 50-4. That record will be improved more than that by the time they face them in November. Can Arch Manning deliver in this tough environment? Will a Texas offensive line, which has a lot of questions, be able to handle this Georgia defensive line? A similar logic as we've used with the Alabama game, as we used with the Ole Miss game. Athens, not an easy place to play. This Georgia defense, I think, will wear down this Texas offense. Yes, the Texas defense will be one of the best in the country, but they can only do so much if their offense cannot sustain drives. I don't think they'll be able to do that. Georgia wears them down. They get the win at home. They will cruise past Charlotte, and they will take on Georgia Tech in Atlanta, a Yellow Jackets team that you do not need to sleep on. We saw that last year. Georgia Tech nearly won that game. Maybe you could have kept Georgia out of the college football playoff, that you win that and then they lose the SEC championship game. Georgia Tech's the dang good football team. Haynes King returns. Jamal Haynes returns. This is a good team that put up 260 rushing yards on the Bulldogs defense just last year. 44-42, 8 overtimes. They have elite talent on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. You never want to underestimate Brent Key. I'm leaning still towards Georgia here, though. They have won 7 straight. I don't think Kirby Smart allows this defense to slip up like they did again last year. I do think it's close. I really do. Georgia Tech, again, you can argue should have won last year. They only lost by 8 the year before. So last 2 meetings have been decided by 1 possession. The gap is getting narrower and narrower between the Bulldogs and the Yellow Jackets, but I still don't think Georgia Tech is quite there yet to beat the big dogs. I think they fall short. I think it's another 1 possession game. I think it's another relatively high scoring game. But the Georgia Tech defense is going to be their downfall in this one, because I do believe the Georgia run defense bulks up and fixes the issues they had last year. In the first off-campus meeting between these two programs since 1913, Georgia gets the win, and we have the Bulldogs finishing 11-1 in 2025. You could argue there's another loss on there. They lost 2 regular season games last year. So, you could argue that they have another loss in there somewhere. Maybe they lose to Auburn and Florida. Maybe you think they lose at home to Alabama or Texas or Georgia Tech in Atlanta. I can't pull myself to do that, especially at home. It's so hard for me to pick against Georgia in Athens. I'm not going to do that. I do think they slip up to one of their rivals. They will lose to Auburn. They will lose to Florida. I think those are interchangeable. In my eyes, though, I still lean more towards the Tigers. Regardless, whether it's 11-1, whether it's 10-2, this is a team that will be competing for an SEC title. This is a team that will be a college football playoff team, and will have a shot to go on and get back and win another national championship. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. 11-1 for the Georgia Bulldogs, bouncing back from a disappointing roller coaster of a season in 2024, but once again will be one of the best in the nation. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to those expert picks, which are some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Do not miss out on those. Do not miss out on our weekly newsletters, also on thegridironexpert.com. The links for, again, down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.